What's up, everybody? So I'm gonna do a little offshoot today, or right now for this episode, because there's a lot of things going on with the MMA coverage as far as podcasts go. The big thing right now is about MMA Guru and him and Demetrius Johnson. They had linked up and did the Mighty Guru podcast. So Demetrius Johnson has his Mighty podcast, and MMA Guru, of course, has MMA Guru podcast, and they linked up and did a thing. And then after this weekend, MMA Guru was doing a live recap, and I guess he was going like really hard and going in on people that were in his live feed, and calling Dagestani's inbred rats and all kinds of stuff, like a lot of shit. And he came out, and I guess Demetrius Johnson put out a video today. Said they had talked about it, and he was like, "Man, I don't agree with you with what you were saying." And he was like, "I was in the moment, and I kind of fucked up." But that's what made him blow up. Like, and DJ gave him the credit. He's like, MMA Guru right now is the biggest MMA podcast out there. Bigger than Ariel's, bigger than DJ's, bigger than Believe Me You podcast with Bisping and Paul Felder. The Submission Radio or Fight Radio. Like, he's bigger than all of them, because he's polarizing and he says shit and he talks a lot of shit. And you know what? To me, like, I don't agree with everything he says, but he says like the stupidest things, and it's funny to me. And I ain't gonna lie, I have a dark sense of humor, so a lot of things that he says is funny, even though I'm like, God damn, that's fucked up. But it's funny to me. And that's why people follow him. And that's why people watch him. Like, I started this channel a few months ago, barely. It's so brand new. But, and I have a full-time job. I've even when I was fighting, I still had a full-time job. I work at General Motors Assembly Plant in Arlington, Texas. And most of my fighting career, I was working there, and I still had a full-time job, and I had to train around that schedule. I have kids, I have a fiance, I have responsibilities, obligations, so I had to do what I got to do. So for most of the day when I'm at work, I'm just consuming content, whether it's Ariel Helwani's show or Morning Combat with Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell, or Believe You Me podcast with Michael Bisping and Paul Felder, MMA Guru, Submission Radio. Those guys are from Australia, I believe, but they have a good show. The Boys in the Back, Ariel's guys. I just consume content, everything about MMA. As far on the boxing side, Showbiz. I love him. Fight Hub TV. Shout out to them. Of course, Ellie Setback when it comes to the boxing, because he's the insider for Robert Garcia's boxing gym, which I love the most. There's just so many podcasts out there that cover boxing, MMA. I mean, I consume it all, and everyone has their own lane, and everyone has their own way that they approach the combat sport game, whether it's boxing or MMA. There's that saying that says there's more ways than one to skin a cat. Ariel breaks down MMA, UFC from a journalistic point of view, because he's a journalist. Guru, he talks a lot of shit, and it's funny though, because it just is. He says outlandish shit about everyone, not just about the Dagestanis or the Russians, but I mean about everyone. I believe he had like a 30-minute rant about Stephen Thompson. He does his podcast with Big John McCarthy. He did the big, I think the thing that got him famous during COVID was John Jones is gay. And he like really went in depth on that. And it got like so many hundreds of thousands of views. And that's really what blew him up. And then you have Bisping and Paul Felder, the Believe You Me podcast, that have like insider point of views, because Bisping was a former world champion. DC has his own podcast, and then he has a show with Chael Sonnen. One of my favorite guys, Dominic Cruz, right now. He just started his own podcast called Love and War. Shout out to him. It's a great podcast, you know. And the thing about Dominic Cruz is like his first few guests on his show have been the guys that he's fought. You know, the first one was against Uriah Faber. I believe he had Travis Barker, because Travis Barker was a big supporter of him and his sponsor when he was coming up with Famous. And then the last one he had TJ Dillashaw. He's fought all these guys, and I think he said he wants to have Cody Garbrandt on, who actually beat him for the title. You know, so like I said, there's more ways than one to skin a cat, and everybody has their own lane to break down the sports that we love the most. You know, MMA and boxing, and I consume a lot of content when I'm at work because, you know, my job's not that hard. So while I work, I'm just watching podcasts, and I like to hear everything because it's the sport that I love the most. You know, I love boxing and I love MMA, you know, especially the UFC. You know, I'll never forget, you know, even before I started fighting professionally, I had already boxed and wrestled in high school and boxed all the way up till high school. But I remember being in my dorm room at Texas State University down in San Marcos, shout out Bobcats, and watching the UFC finale for the Ultimate Fighter in the house. And I remember watching it in my room, Forrest Griffin versus Stephan Bonnar. And I remember just sitting there watching it, and I'm just like, oh my fucking God. And I remember calling everybody. I had a flip phone, Razor phone, and I'm calling everybody like, are you watching? Put it on Spike TV. You have to watch this fucking fight. You know, and that was the game changer for the UFC. That's what, you know, blew it up to what it is now. But I remember being a fan back then because, you know, that was in 05. And I wouldn't go pro for 4 years after that in 09. But, you know, I've always been, you know, a fan of the sport and love the sport, you know. And even before that, you know, I had older cousins who were training jiu-jitsu and fought before in Pancrase, and you know, I grew up watching the Pride fights on VHS. You know, the whole reason that I started training and wanted to train Muay Thai was because I saw Vanderlei Silva knock out Rampage Jackson with those knees, and I'm like, holy shit, what the fuck is that? It was Muay Thai. Granted, it was from shoot box, the Brazilian style Muay Thai, but I'm like, I need to learn that. And that's why I started training Muay Thai when I, you know, after college and everything. But, you know, everyone has their own lane. And the beautiful thing about, you know, YouTube, social media, the table is endless. Everybody has a place at the table. Everybody can eat, you know, as long as you bring good content, and everyone has a place to eat, you know. I mean, some people's chairs might be bigger than others, you know, like the Guru, MMA Guru, Ariel Helwani, Ali Setback, Showbiz. You know, they might have bigger chairs because they've been doing it longer, and you know, their following is bigger. You know, like I said, I just started this channel a few months ago, and I think back and I'm like, man, I should have started this earlier. You know, and like during the COVID times, like we were just here at the house and doing a lot of barbecues between ourselves because everybody had that money, you know. But I think I got in my own head a lot of times because I'm like, man, people really want to hear me talk and hear my point of view. I was still actively fighting at the time, but I mean, but now I'm like, man, I wish I should have done it earlier. Because, you know, everybody has their own perspective. Everyone has their own lenses when they look at fights or break down fights, and you know, everything that revolves around the fight game. You know, it's I absolutely love it, man. I love everything from like the press conferences to the weigh-ins to the sit-downs. You know, when Floyd was on top of the world, Floyd Mayweather, and him and Oscar De La Hoya did the first 24/7, that changed the game. That absolutely changes the game. You know, that's why you have all these, you know, UFC countdowns and embeddeds. Like all that spawned from Floyd Mayweather versus Oscar De La Hoya and their fight. You know, and it was great because it gave you an insight of what these guys were doing in training camp. Who looks better? Who looks ready? And that changed the game. And now with social media and YouTube and everything, like, I can't remember his name, and I'm gonna beat myself up for it, but it's the guy who does Anatomy of a Fighter. He's embedded with like the Khabib camp, and he's been following them for years, since even before Khabib even got the title. He does an amazing job. It's an amazing channel on YouTube. If look it up, guys. Anatomy of a Fighter. He does an amazing job. I believe he's been on Rogan's podcast before, but man, his content is absolutely great, and it's compelling, and man, it makes you feel for those guys. And that was the beautiful thing about 24/7. It gets you involved with the fighters, and that's why UFC does their stuff now, and that's why they have the embedded, and that's why Turki Al-Sheikh is doing all this stuff with all these guys with the build-ups for, Usyk, Joshua, Usyk, Fury. Like it makes it bigger because you get invested in these fighters, right? But I said all this because Guru got canceled for saying or not canceled. Him and DJ Demetrius Johnson, they said that it was, they both came to an agreement that they'll go their separate ways, and they'll just put it on the backside for now, the back burner, the Mighty Guru podcast, because DJ has his Mighty podcast, Guru has his MMA Guru podcast, but people are going to talk shit, and sometimes you're not going to like it, and sometimes you will like it, but that's what makes it special. Guru, he talks a lot of shit, and I think a lot of that is a persona that he puts on, because I really didn't watch a lot of MMA Guru. I would catch the clips where he's just on rants, and that's funny and that's cool. But when he did the sit down with Demetrius Johnson, and he was himself, like, the guy knows MMA. He knows what he's talking about, but I think he just talks shit to be, polarizing, and, he really brought that that fan base in, and that's cool. There ain't nothing wrong with that. I mean, lately he's been just like shitting on everybody, and I mean, I'm not even gonna say nothing wrong with that. It's, you can say whatever you want. That's the thing about social media. You have the right to say whatever you want and express your own opinions. Sometimes it can go too far, and people are gonna make you pay for that, like Dylan Dennis had to this weekend. When he got beat up by the Muslim Brotherhood. But when you talk shit, and you have to answer to that sometimes. People are, I don't ever think that you should put hands on somebody for no reason, but I mean, shit, if you're talking shit and you're poking the bear, you're gonna get checked. That's just how it goes. And I'm not against that. If people are, like, deliberately just going after you, or not even after you, after you is one thing. I've had people that I fought in the past who were talking shit about me. That's fine. All goes, everything goes in love and war. Everything goes in war, right? But if people are going after your wife, your kids, your religion, that's stepping the line. That's stepping the line. In my point of view, that's stepping the line, right? So, if I was fighting somebody and I was nothing but respectful, but they started going after my kids or my fiance or my family, then yeah, it's gonna be personal after that, and I'm gonna do whatever I can to hurt you, like legitimately hurt you, not just beat you, but hurt you, But that was the thing with MMA Guru, and he's gonna keep on, and he's gonna do his own thing. He's probably gonna get even more followers after this thing that's going on, because everybody's talking about it. I'm talking about it. There's so many other podcasters are talking about it. I consume so much content because I love it, but I always want to be myself and, bring my point of view and my insight. I'm not going to be the journalist that Ariel Helwani is. I'm not going to be the outlandish shit talker that MMA Guru is. I'm not going to be, Luke Thomas does absolutely beautiful fight breakdowns. He goes into depth and details with his breakdowns, and I wish I had the time to do that. I just don't. Like I said earlier, I've always had a full-time job, even when I was fighting, even now, And now it's like I work full time. I still teach classes during the week, and then I find time to do the podcast because I love it. I'm retired, and I never retired because I couldn't compete anymore. I just retired because on the regional scene, I had so many more fights than these up and coming guys that it was hard for me to get a fight. So I kind of just got phased out and faded out because nobody really wanted to take a fight. These up and coming guys who are 5-0, 5-2, 7-1, 8-4, didn't want to take a fight against a guy who's got 20 pro fights under his belt. So but it is what it is. I'm at peace with it. I'm cool with it. But this helps me stay involved and connected to the sport. Outside of my family, my mom, my dad, my brothers, my sisters, my fiance, my kids. Other than that, MMA, boxing, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu has been the most consistent, positive thing in my life. And if I didn't have that, I don't even know where I'd be. I don't even want to think where I'd be mentally or physically. It's really helped me cope with, with life in general. Life is hard, and it can be hard. So, at least I've always had that outlet to compete and fight. And, I don't have MMA anymore, but I still can train jiu-jitsu. I still train guys, and I can do things like that. But this podcast has really helped me just stay connected with the sport because I get to, watch fights and call fights and recap fights and preview fights. And, it's been a godsend to me, and I love it. So, everyone has their own flavor, A lot of people don't like Guru and think that he's a racist and all this and that. But, I don't necessarily think that. I think he just gets emotional and he says a lot of outlandish shit. But, there's no denying that he's not, the top MMA podcaster in the world right now. But, like I said, there's more than one way to skin the cat, and everybody can hit the angle any way they want. I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to try to do it the best that I can. And, I never made it to the big time. I never made it to the UFC. And you have guys, former world champions that have podcasts, and they're great, and they have better production value than me. I'm usually just shooting this off my phone or my tablet, but things are getting better, and I'm going to set up more things and possibly have interviews with, with the owners of the company that I used to fight for. And, just the possibilities are endless, and I'm going to keep bringing you content, and I'm going to keep being consistent with these videos because I love this, and I really, 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 truly love this sport. It's been a staple in my life since I was in the 7th grade, when I was boxing and then wrestled in high school, and then I found Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu after college, and then I started fighting MMA and started fighting professional Muay Thai and, competing at the World Championships in Jiu-Jitsu. This has been a God bless for me, a godsend for me to be involved with combat sports because it really has kept me grounded. Outside of my family, it's the best thing, most positive thing in my life. And I do this because, one, I love it, and two, everybody is looking for a different point of view. You can listen to all the big time podcasters, but what about the little guys like me? We have our own point of views and see things differently, and we might pick fights differently, or it's the beautiful thing about the sport. Everyone sees things differently. You go to the NFL, you have former players and analysts that all have different picks and everything, right? So, but I think MMA and boxing are the most, intimate sports that you can be in because it's one-on-one, it's all on you. Yes, you have a camp, yes, you have a team, but at the end of the day, it's all on you to go out there and perform. And that's the most intimate form of competition and combat that you can do. And I love it so much. And yeah, man, I love it. And Guru is going to be fine. Demetrious Johnson's going to be fine. All the other podcasts are going to be fine. And, it's all about what you like and what you like to consume and who you want to hear from. Speaking on all the names that I spoke about before in the podcast, Joe Rogan used to have a really, really great MMA podcast. When he'd bring the fighters in, it's been a while. I think it's been maybe a month or so since he's had a fighter on, and I believe the last one was MVP. But those used to be my favorite podcasts from Joe Rogan, because he really go in depth. Because look, Joe Rogan never fought, but I mean, he knows the MMA world. He knows. I mean, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He did Taekwondo for years. I believe he's probably a black belt in Taekwondo. He kickboxed. So you just can't wash that off like he doesn't know anything. He does know a lot. He's very knowledgeable in the sport. I don't know if he's been so in depth now as he was back then, because he was actively training with Eddie Bravo and Jean-Jacques Machado and all those guys. But he's still up there, and I really do miss all his MMA podcasts, because he went on a run there where he was just knocking out fighter after fighter after fighter on his podcast, the Jerry podcast. We haven't seen in a while as consistently, but whenever he has those are the ones that I listen to the most. Like I like the comedians and the scientists and the historians that he brings on. I do like all that, but it was the MMA ones where he had on that were the most watched, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but like I said, everyone has their own lane, and I promise you I will do my best to continue to put out content and bring you guys my point of view, and just from my experiences, and everything from not just fighting, but the things I went through, cutting weight, making fights, doing interviews. Towards the end of my career, I was really doing like a lot of media work. I'm bilingual, so I was doing Spanish interviews, English interviews, selling tickets, trying to really promote fights, and the whole time I had a full-time job and being a dad and like doing all that. So, everyone has their own point of view. So that's the beautiful thing about the sport. Everybody can look at it from a different eye. So that's just my little rant. Everybody has a lot to say about people who are online, and like I said, I've only been doing it for a while, but I really like to be involved with the comments, and the people that follow the channel. So yeah, man, just keep it up, and if there's something that you don't like that I say, hey, hit me up in the comments. If there's something that I can do better, let me know in the comments. And just keep watching, man. I promise you, it's just gonna keep getting better from here. I'm new to this, but I'm still gonna just keep doing my best and bring you guys the best content that I can. And I hope you guys continue to watch, and I hope you guys enjoy what I bring you guys. So thank you guys. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the bell, share it with everyone that that loves combat sports, boxing, MMA, especially the UFC. And then thank you guys once again, man. See you on the next one. All right. Peace.